take projection.
It's Friday morning, and you know what that means. It's time for another edition of the Alabama Slam podcast. I'm your host, Corey Hanna.
What's going on, guys? It's Patrick Akers, and I am not friends with Scott Colton, in case you wanted to know.
Well, in case you wanted to know what we're leading off the podcast with tonight, we're clearly going to start, or this morning, whatever you want to call it, whenever you listen to this, we're going to talk about the post all-out media scrum. Patrick has about a page and a half of notes on that. He's got about 6 pages of notes total, so bear with us if this episode runs long. We're going to touch on a lot of the stuff from All Out, and then there was a great episode of Dynamite last night as well, so buckle up. Let's start with the media scrum, because we got to talk about that before we talk about any of the matches at All Out. What's happened Sunday evening was sounds a little insane. There's clearly 2 different stories coming out about who did what and who started what and this, that, and the other. And there could be some legal action at some point. So, Patrick, I know you've got a ton of thoughts on it. So,
Bro, somebody fucking bit somebody.
A grown-ass man.
What the hell is going on?
A grown-ass man bit somebody.
How many fights have I been in? 3? I've been in 3 fist fights in my life. I can't remember in any of those fights if I ever thought, I'm going to bite this motherfucker right now. And where did he bite? Did he bite him on the arm? Did he get him on the cheek?
I haven't seen any indication on that.
I think if I fought somebody and they bit me during the fight and I was thinking about it afterwards, I'd be like, you know what? I think I'm going to have to fight this son of a bitch again for biting me. What the hell is going on?
So in the off chance that you haven't kept up with the altercation that happened between CM Punk and Ace Steel, who was in his room, and then the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, and somehow Christopher Daniels and Brand Cutler and Pat Buck. And
the head of legal might have been there.
Michael Nakazawa. I mean, it keeps growing. The list is growing. So Ace Steel supposedly bit Kenny Omega, and that came out first. And then the day later, they said CM Punk's dog was in the room. Kenny was kind of like chilling, trying to stay out of it. And the dog starts acting up. So Kenny's like, I'm going to help this. I'm going to save this dog. And apparently, Ace Steel threw a fucking chair across the room and then proceeded to bite Kenny Omega.
I mean, it just, every day, it gets wilder and wilder. And, like, I guess we should talk about how this started off. Because I watched All Out. Of course, it was 4 hours, but it felt like 17 hours.
It was a little shorter than the last one. I think the last one ran 4:15.
It was, yeah. So after the pay-per-view was over, I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm laying in bed, looking at Twitter, and people are like, oh, man, CM Punk's going off. And I'm like, well, whatever. I'll wait to watch it. I'll watch it tomorrow morning. Get up Monday, Labor Day, scrolling through Twitter, start seeing the clips. I'm like, holy shit. And I guess my first thought, and I've kept this thought, it's been consistent this whole week. What a fucking piece of shit CM Punk / Phil Brooks is.
I mean, if you yeah.
Because I'm not even that mad about the fight, honestly. I think the fight's funny, particularly. Now, it's a professional environment. You shouldn't be fighting. But whatever, like we talk about all the time, it's wrestling, egos, it comes with the territory, so to speak. But his comments at the scrum.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just talking about Scott Cole. First of all, if you haven't seen the beginning of it, no one asked him about Colt Cabana. Not a single person. He came to that scrum looking for a fight.
Yeah.
A verbal fight.
I mean, he'd been looking for one for about 2 weeks.
Right. And so to sit there and be like, I'm going to start this and pick Nick Hossman, whoever, Wrestling Inc., the journalist that was there.
I mean, if Hangman Page was a more terrible person, which he's probably one of the better people in the locker room. If Hangman Page was a piece of shit, he'd have probably gotten his ass beat by Hangman at this point.
Well, it's just, again, yeah, so let me look at my notes. I have a page and a half of fucking notes, basically in so many words calling CM Punk unprofessional and an egomaniac and a narcissist and
so yeah, he gets asked one question and then just goes off the rails for 20 minutes.
He goes off the rails, if he calls Adam Page an empty-headed dumb fuck, says the Young Bucks couldn't manage a target, which I would imagine around Black Friday, managing a target's probably pretty fucking tough.
Yeah.
With all the Karens in there trying to get PS5s for their kids.
I wouldn't want that job.
There's probably all kinds of other backstage fights at the damn Target.
Yeah.
But then again, like his demeanor, man, I mean, I don't know how it came across to you. He looked unhinged and chaotic and just like...
Eating a muffin.
Again, yeah, just eating a muffin. So, and, he's to blame of this. I think he takes the bulk of the blame. I think, the Young Bucks and Kenny take a part of the blame as well.
Yeah, so the story originally was that the Bucks knocked down the door and everybody got to fighting. Well, the report that came out yesterday is that the Bucks show up with head of legal, right? And they're knocking on the door, and then when it finally gets opened, Punk starts throwing haymakers.
And who knows if any of that is, all that is conjecture, right? That's one side.
Sure.
He said versus he said.
I mean, if the Bucks kick the door down, not cool.
Right.
I mean, especially as EVPs. If the Bucks are not EVPs and they kick the door down, I mean, that's a different story. But the Bucks as EVPs of the company, you can't do that. You do not conduct business that way, right?
Yeah, you can't.
Even though he was like, y'all come say this shit to my face.
Right.
They go try to say it to his face, and if you believe the story, then he had the fucking door locked.
And there's so much he said in that media scrum that I just took issue with. Practically everything he said I took issue with. And again, we have to keep in mind how this started. This started with, if you'll remember the line that Hangman Page said to him during their program, where the only thing he said that apparently set this off was, you talk about workers' rights, but yet you've done the exact opposite since you've been here. Now, I'll have to go back and listen to her. Were we doing the podcast at that point? I think we were. I think it was one of our first or second episodes. Now, we're pretty astute viewers of AEW, partially because we do this podcast, right? And I remember us being like, that was a little bit weird line to say, but we passed over it because it was so innocuous and indecipherable. Like 99.9% of the audience had no idea what Hangman was talking about. There's no question whatsoever about what Punk was talking about. I mean, he's in front of a live mic, burying Hangman Page, burying the Young Bucks, talking about he's hurt and he's tired of working with these fucking kids. Meanwhile, Tony Khan, who I think takes the bulk of the blame of this is the majority of his fault because he's the captain of the ship as the boss.
He hadn't done anything about it yet.
He sat there the whole time, didn't say anything. He looked visibly uncomfortable. He cringed at parts.
Do you think that maybe he said something to him afterwards? Because like we had this conversation about like, he's working with these people he's idolized for so long, and maybe he's afraid to step in. Maybe he didn't say anything during the press conference because he didn't want to contradict anything. But do you think like maybe Punk got cussed out afterward?
No.
You don't think so?
No, because if you were going to do that, why would you not do that there?
Yeah.
Or why would you at least not be like, hey, stop him and be like, we're not going to do this here.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about the pay-per-view. If you got any questions about the match,
reel it in.
We're not going to talk about anything that has to do with a lawsuit from, I don't even know, almost a decade at this point, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares, man. But you, like, talk about making a fucking mountain out of a molehill. Like, All this stuff could have been kept backstage, and none of this could have ever aired in front of the fans because, like you said, like you and I did not know what Hangman was talking about.
Yeah. Went over my head.
Yeah. And so for Punk to then sit up there and be like, first of all, what I took issue with is him saying, like, I think he said an empty-headed dumb fuck who's never done anything in the business. Okay, dog, this was the top babyface in the company who main evented the first ever AEW pay-per-view. So if you're going to sit on your fucking high horse and just be like, because none of these guys have been in WWE like I have, nobody's done shit. Well, that's disrespectful to literally every single one of those men and women in the locker room, minus Moxley and Jericho. Danielson. Like, way to be a leader, my guy. You know, you're the champ.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, I forgot the name of the podcast. Somebody tweeted it out and I retweeted it. I think I retweeted it. But, you know, they compared the clip of Punk. It was one of the first promos he did. It might have been the first promo. He's like, I'm excited to see if I can still hang with the talent and the young talent in this locker room. I'm excited to work with these guys and see if I still have it. And then it was like, cut to, I'm tired of working with these fucking kids. So it was like he went from I respect these guys to fuck these kids.
Well, it's because that press conference was a mask-off moment.
Yeah.
You want to know who the real CM Punk is? That a bunch of guys, I mean, you can go back and read shoot interviews and watch stuff on YouTube that a lot of guys have had problems with Punk. And primarily because this is who they feel like he actually is. And again, just the level of disrespect, not only to just to be eating a muffin and to be having, I see you like having a drink, you know, you're coming back drinking a Gatorade or whatever.
Sure.
But just to be eating a muffin like you're so high and mighty above all these people, it's just, it came across so egotistical and narcissistic and just like the constant level of disrespect because, you know, did CM Punk front any of his cash to start AEW?
No. He waited until the pandemic was over and they were having live crowds again. Like,
right.
You know, a lot of people carried this fucking company when it could have crashed and burned during the pandemic.
Right.
People like Colt Cabana that were out there fucking wrestling every week.
You know, if you felt like you needed to save wrestling so much, you could have took some of your wealth that you had and started a pro wrestling company.
Yeah.
You know? But you waited till the Bucks and Omega and Cody and Hangman, and even to, you know, Jericho and Moxley, guys like that, to start this thing and get this thing to where they had a TV deal. You weren't there when the TV deal was first started.
Yeah.
So now you're going to disrespect all these guys that have built this from the ground up, that's then allowed you to come in and make a 7-figure salary?
Yeah.
Who the hell do you think you are, guy? It's how I took it, and it's obviously how a lot of people in the locker room took it, because from everything that I've read, you know, I think one guy out there, I think Brian Alvarez said, like, hey, 95% of this locker room fucking doesn't like him right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of speculation about, I mean, there were a lot of things going on yesterday that said he would be gone by the end of Wednesday, or we would know what his status would be, but nothing ever came out. And now that they've said that he's injured and will be out of wrestling for 8 months, like, there's a lot of gray area. Like, are they going to cut his ass and just be like, peace?
I'd be done with him.
Yeah.
And then him saying, too, if you'll catch in that press conference, he said, I'm trying to run a business here.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
You're not trying to run a business. You have no skin in this game whatsoever.
Yeah. And you can never trust him in front of a live microphone again.
No, and again, like, and this will kind of hit on what...
He's fucked you up twice with the calling out Paige backstage when he was clearly not ready for that.
Right.
And then the microphone, you know, scrum the other night.
You know, and it's not that what Punk was saying was untrue, right? Like, it's just the manner in which you go about airing that dirty laundry in front of everybody like that. When this could have been a simple conversation. If you had a problem with what Hangman Page did, you go back, you have a meeting with Tony, you sit down. If you don't like the outcome of that meeting, you look at Page, you look at Tony, you say, I don't want to work with this motherfucker anymore. I'll never put him over. Figure it out. And that's the end of it. And if you don't like, you don't have to like who you work with. We've said that time and time again. But what you then can't do is get out as the face of the company. Remember, he's the champion. And when it comes to being a pro wrestling champion, you know, pro wrestling championships they're a little bit weird because it's not something that you earn, right? In the sense that, like, if you're an NFL team and you win the Super Bowl, that means that you're the best team, right? Becoming a world champion in an organization is a stamp of approval from the promoter and from the business side that you're somebody that we can count on to do the right thing, to be a leader in the locker room, to help us fill arenas and sell merchandise. You know, that is part of what comes with that championship belt, and that's kind of what Moxie was alluding to Wednesday night. You think Punk's leading that locker room? No. He's got people trying to kick down his damn door. You know? Like, that's not how a champion conducts themselves. Why do you think Roman Reigns has been a champion for 2 years in WWE? It's not just because he has a great presence about him and a great look and he has great matches. It's because Vince knew and Hunter now knows we're never going to be embarrassed by Roman Reigns. You know, he had the little hiccup with the PED scandal or whatever, and they had to suspend him for 60 days or whatever. But, like, Roman's always going to do what's right. By all accounts, he's beloved in the locker room. He's setting an example for those other guys. That is what being a champion is all about.
Yeah.
And so, like, Punk to continually be up there on that press conference, man, I was like again, like, to me, I'm not even, the fight is one thing. What he said in that press conference is, that's the issue. That's the issue that we're having. And so who knows what comes from it. And if it was me, this guy ain't worth the trouble, man. He's not.
Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, do I enjoy watching him on TV? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's great.
But I don't know as a president of a company if that kind of behavior is worth dealing with. I mean, and if his side is true and what the Bucks did was legit, then they don't need to be EVPs anymore, probably.
No, and I mean they're not at fault here either.
Right.
Like, they have a part to play. They probably never should have been EVPs to begin with, just because they were wrestlers, and it's tough being one of the boys, but also trying to be one of management. You know, I think there were reports a couple weeks ago when Omega came back and they had that big talent meeting. And I don't know if this has been confirmed, but some people said Omega got up there in front of everybody and looked at the locker room and been like, I wouldn't have hired 80% of y'all. Which, if that's the case, he should have been stripped of his title of EVP right there on the spot.
Yeah.
So, you know, is this doom and gloom? Is this the end of AEW? No. Are they crashing and burning? I don't think so. You can turn this thing around.
No, I mean, and they hit the reset button real hard last night on Dynamite. We'll get to that, but
Tony has a part to play in this.
For sure. And, you know, there was a lot of people like, hey, is Tony going to man up and do anything about it? And he very clearly did, which we'll get to that later too. But I would have loved to have heard what he said, you know, in the meeting. I assume he was at the talent meeting, and probably spoke before Danielson and Moxley and Jericho.
Yeah, so apparently they had a talent meeting before Wednesday's Dynamite.
Yeah.
Kind of like a rah-rah sort of speech. Yeah, he spoke, Moxley spoke, Danielson spoke, Jericho spoke. You know, the real leaders in the locker room, the real guys who had stakes in the game of this place.
Yeah.
And I mean, Moxley, I tweeted it out, that dude's he's the fucking MVP of that place. You know, he is the ace of AEW. He carried them through the pandemic. He carried them through Punk's injury. He's going to have to, he obviously didn't even get to go on vacation yet. He has to come back because of all this bullshit. And I know we're jumping all over the place, but and we'll talk about his promo in particular here in a second, but just going back to Punk, you know, the whole best in the world thing was always, to me, kind of ironic, even when he was in WWE. Because he wasn't the best in the ring. He's maxed out at very good in the ring. But he's nowhere near the level in ring of a guy like AJ Styles or Bryan Danielson or any of these other all-time great in-ring performers. And he certainly wasn't to the level of what a John Cena type star was, even though he thought he should have been. which is, I mean, hilarious. I mean, John Cena, the amount of charity work that guy did and just the star making that he had, you know, there's a reason why he's also in Hollywood now. So,
Right.
like, the best in the world moniker was, you know, always something that it was self-appointed, right? Nobody else appointed him that. The only reason that fans liked him so much was because he represented like an edge and a sort of punk rock element that was missing from WWE at the time because it was so sanitized. That the WWE during his run was such a sanitized, homogenized product that a lot of the grown men, adult fans flocked to CM Punk because he represented something different.
Yeah.
AEW, to its detriment sometimes, is not sanitized. I mean, you got motherfuckers fighting each other in the back. I mean, this is all punk rock. That's all this is.
Yeah.
So, like, he's not, I don't think he's as needed in this company as what he thinks he is. And again, just the gall to join these guys' promotions. I mean, Omega and the Bucks, again, the disrespect of saying these guys have never done anything in the business. They got a Bullet Club shirt, was the highest selling wrestling shirt in this country, selling it in Hot Topic, and they weren't attacked. The fucking promotion was based in Japan. What are you talking about, my guy? Like, it just makes I was watching the whole thing with my jaw on the floor because I was like, the gall of this guy. Does he not see how much of a hypocrite and just a dickhead he's coming off sounding like right now?
Who does he think he is to say he's trying to run a business here? Like,
yeah. And again, like, you know, he talked about Hangman saying that thing and like jeopardizing the first $1 million gate that AEW's done. Well, what's he talking about there? He's talking about the fact that Punk was thinking about walking and not showing up at Double or Nothing because of what Hangman said. Well, motherfucker, Hangman didn't jeopardize it, then you did.
yeah.
You're the one that jeopardized that gate. Wasn't him. None of the fans knew what the hell he was talking about. So, like, just they're fucking egomaniacs, man. People like him are just not worth it.
Yeah.
They're really not. And, like, have the ratings reflected it that much? No.
Yeah, I mean, they're cracking 1 million viewers.
But they were
almost
cracking 1
weekly.
million viewers.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's been a significant increase with Punk in the last year.
No. So, like, whatever that, you know, if it was me, obviously the fact that he's hurt now and has to be out for 8 months anyway, and that's another thing, like, you know, the best ability is availability. And, dog, you've been a 2-time AEW champion. You've had the belt for 7 days because you've been hurt twice.
Yeah.
So, like, is he even worth it if he comes back in 8 months and, you know, they do something with this and try to make some money off of it?
Yeah,
I mean,
if they can all figure this shit out between now and then and make it an actual angle, then they can make a lot of fucking money.
But right now it's embarrassing.
But I don't know that I trust trying to work it out with Punk.
Yeah.
Because the slightest thing goes wrong and he might go sideways.
Right. And you're back you're right back in the same situation.
Yeah. So do you have more thoughts before we circle back
Let me see.
to All
I got
Out?
anything else that I called Punk when I was writing this thing? There's a lot of just jackass, fuckhead, a lot of that stuff. Again, just the muffin. I don't like the arrogance of people. Just personally, that just turns me off and rubs me the wrong way, particularly when, you know, there's no gratitude whatsoever that he was showcasing to any of those guys who laid the groundwork to build that company up into what it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, if the rumors are to be believed and Punk coming in is really what caused Cody Rhodes to walk, Tony, you chose the wrong guy.
Yeah, Brandy tweeted something out today that was basically like, you know, kind of like, see?
I mean, you would hope that a guy who spent 7 years away, if he really loved pro wrestling this much, you know, maybe would have changed, particularly at 41 years old. It's unfortunate that's not the case.
Yeah.
And so if I was Tony, that media scrum would be the last CM Punk appearance in AEW.
Yeah. It very well might be. We will find out. I would assume sooner than later, but I mean, maybe they wait and see how his recovery goes and try to work it out, but I don't know.
I mean, is CM Punk a bigger star than Hangman Page? Yeah, I would say he is. Is he a bigger star than Paige, Omega, and the Bucks collectively, no way in hell. No way in hell. And so
and those guys have carried the storylines for the company for 3 years at this point.
Right. And again, what Paige did to you is nowhere near what you did to him.
Right.
Calling him out and making him look like a dipshit, and then saying what you said to a room full of journalists when you weren't even asked the question. So him keep saying like, it's embarrassing I have to talk about this. Bro, didn't nobody ask you this fucking question? You have done this. You could have just let the shit slide and been a bigger man.
Yeah.
And so we'll see what happens with this fight. You know, by the time listeners hear this, he might already be fired. Who knows?
I mean, that's very, very true. So before we go into all the matches, give me your overall impression of All Out from Sunday night.
I thought it was good. I thought it was good. It was unfortunate that it all got overshadowed. But, you know, there are elements that were like, you know, there are nitpicks and criticisms that we'll talk about. But, like, overall, like, no one can top the level of in-ring work that AEW does on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. I mean, we're watching all-timers fucking wrestle week in and week out.
Yeah.
And, you know, if MJF came back, that should have been the bigger story.
Yeah, I mean, he's gotten overshadowed the last couple of days. And
Which
nobody ever really thought they'd feel bad for MJF.
Which, you know, life's a bitch sometimes, right? MJF does a thing. Now, whether that was a shoot or a work with the stuff with Wardlow and him buying the plane ticket, who knows? I mean, obviously they've turned it into a work, but that overshadowed Wardlow's moment, and now here we are with MJF, and everyone's talking about what Punk did.
Yeah, so we started off the night. We're going to skip the buy-in. So you start off with the casino ladder match and the Joker. And there was a lot of speculation about how would they bring MJF back. I'm a little mixed on it. Part of me thinks it was pretty great to see all the guys come in the black and the black masks, and then the guy that actually pulls the chip off of the ring at the top was Stokely. I thought that was funny and creative. I enjoyed that aspect of it. And then the devil comes out, right?
Right.
And they didn't reveal it immediately. And I was like, okay, you brought MJF back to not reveal him. I was like, clearly we're going to get a reveal at the end of the show. And then there was part of me that was like, what if they wait a fucking week to reveal it, right? So I was a little mixed. The match itself wasn't that great. There were a couple of moments here and there, but there were a lot of awkward moments as well. It seemed like an odd way to start the show.
Yeah, the match itself, the ladder match, was sloppy. And I don't know who the producer of the match was, but you have to reiterate to these guys, hey, man, you got to run down to the ring. Like, Roosh, you can't stand there and take your suit off while Wheeler Yuta has a ladder with no one in the middle of the ring, but he can't go up and climb the ladder to get the chip because he's not supposed to.
So there's nobody there to knock him down.
Right, and so you just it just looked dumb, and Wheeler Yuta looks like a dipshit. And, like, there was a lot of those moments where it was just sloppy.
Yeah.
I think the only guy whose spots actually made sense in the match was Dante Martin's, because all his spots were geared around trying to get the chip. You know, he does the springboard, jump on Claudio's back to try to reach for it. So, yeah, the match was sloppy. And then the stuff with MJF and Stokely's guys, like, it's cool. They're cool little ideas, but I think they could have been executed better. Just because, I don't know, there was no mystery about who the Joker was. When it came out, everyone knew it was MJF. I
mean, he was built like him, and so there was, you know, you want to have a little bit of suspension of disbelief. You're like, oh, I don't know if this is him. Well, the moment he steps up on the side of the ring and does that little kick, like that he does backwards, like he's kicking the dirt back before he goes through the ropes, I was like, well, that's MJF. MJF does that every fucking time he gets in the ring.
Yeah, I think for me, what I would have liked to seen had it just been more chaotic, right? Like, I don't know if MJF being the Joker is the best way to do that. You know, because even commentary were like, oh, they hijacked the match. Well, they didn't hijack the match. MJF was in the match. hijacking it would have been like if the Joker would have just been literally anybody else. I wouldn't even had a Joker. I would have just announced all the guys on the graphic and then had MJF and his guys come steal the damn thing.
Yeah.
You know? And again, we could have just held off on the reveal because there was no mystery involved. As soon as the music hit, which, cool. I mean, it all looked cool. The mask was fucking cool. Them being in all black's cool. Having him align with Stokely and having those guys come out and steal the shit, like, that was cool. Sympathy for the Devil. Who knows how much they paid for that?
I was going to say, there's a music budget for the show right there.
But, yeah, I mean, that was cool. But I think there were more creative ways, I think, to use it. And I guess we might as well go ahead and talk about how he came back out at the end of the show. Because I thought the voicemail stuff, again, that's a really cool idea to use that voicemail. But I think it's either got to go one or two ways. Either the voicemail from Tony has to be him groveling and being like, we need you back. These, you know, this company needs you. I need you. Instead of putting it off as a fan, it's like he needs to really grovel. Or the voicemail needs to be, you son of a bitch, you'll never step foot in my company again. You think you're the shit, yada, yada, yada. Basically played up that way. It was kind of like this wishy-washy in the middle thing. But it's a cool idea to play it. And then, when he takes the mask off and, you know, puts the scarf on.
Yeah.
And then when he comes out, I mean, he's a star. Like, you just see it. And the place went crazy.
Yeah, I talked to a guy that went, old Florence buddy, Daniel Chrysler, and he was there. And he said that, like, once he started walking out on stage, he said, we didn't hear any of the audio that was going on. He's like, we couldn't hear anything. He's like, I didn't know what happened until I saw it later. He was like, the crowd was fucking insane.
Oh, yeah, it was. I mean, they were in Chicago. Chicago-made Punk is standing there in the middle of the ring with the belt, and nobody gives a shit because MJF's on the ramp, and MJF chants broke out everywhere.
Right.
And, like, if they have this idea to keep MJF as a heel, they need to be careful because this is feeling like what The Rock felt like in early WWF, where he's supposed to be a heel, but the fans are like, God damn it, this dude is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And, like, he's doing all that he just naturally becomes a babyface.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we've seen it happen with FTR.
Yeah. And, I mean, I think with MJF, you have this dude is a generational talent.
Yeah.
And I think the fans I think they've known that for a while. And I think that the fucking Mark promo that he did a couple months ago really solidified it. And so, yeah, him coming back was a huge moment, and it's what should have been talked about. But like we said, the Punk stuff afterwards overshadowed it. But, yeah, cool in theory. I just wish some other stuff would have been, like, tightened up. Maybe you save Sympathy for the Devil at the very end, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But, you want to have the his music hitting and having that pop like that and that uproar. But, yeah, I mean, just... It was a cool way to do it. I think just little nitpicky things here and there, but having him back is a big boost to this show.
Yeah, no doubt.
And you could feel...
Especially if Punk is going to stay around, if he's gone for 8 months, it's good timing.
It's good timing. It looks like they're going to run with the 2024 stuff.
Yeah.
Mirroring what CM Punk did when he was in Ring of Honor. So good stuff all around. I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get later down in the match. But.
So we got a ton of shit to cover. Let's move on. One of the great matches from that night was the Trios title, the Elite versus the Dark Order. Top notch. Right out of the gate. A lot of good spots in it. Just getting their asses whipped on both sides. Little bit of uncomfortable situations between Hangman and the Dark Order. The first time we've ever really seen any discontent between those guys.
Which I thought was weird. I don't know how that played to you. But him, like, Reynolds working over the back and Hangman stopping him and Reynolds just being like, hey, man, like, we're trying to win.
Yeah.
That was a little bit like, okay, because that didn't matter as the match went. You know,
right.
Fucking Hangman and Omega started exchanging some real stiff blows there.
Right.
So that stuff was a little bit weird in the beginning, but man, when this thing picked up, it picked up.
Yeah.
and
Kenny had some words for the camera and backstage.
Yeah, which I wrote on here, like, you know, he's walking up the ramp and he says, "Don't you dare fucking back up. You boys in the back, try to beat that bitch." And I was like, who's he talking to? Well, obviously we know who he's talking to now in retrospect.
But we found out a few hours later.
We found out, yeah, who exactly he was talking to. But, I mean, yeah, you get these 6 guys in the ring. And shout out to Reynolds and Silver, man. You know, people on the internet have called them jobbers. Again, they're not jobbers.
No.
They're an underdog tag team. They have so much talent in the world. If fucking John Silver was 6'2", he'd be one of the most over guys on the roster.
Yeah, I tweeted out that night. Y'all follow us at Alabama Slam Pod. We're trying to build that account up a little bit on Twitter. I tweeted that night. I was like, if he had about 6 more inches on him, he'd be in the game.
Again, they're an underdog tag team, and so like that's not how they're presented. Is not jobbers. They're not enhancement talent at all. They're talented as hell. And that Chicago crowd was hot, man. They were waiting for Hangman and Omega to stand in the middle of the ring, and when they did, that place went up. So you know. For as much as Punk wants to talk about these guys have never done anything in the business, well, there was, you know, thousands of people in Chicago that would like to think differently.
Sold out. I believe it was sold out or damn near it if it wasn't sold out.
Yeah, and I mean, you can just tell the way that they respond to both of those guys.
Yeah.
So
the Elite ends up winning, and we'll circle back to that in a little while. You know, I don't think anyone really expected the Dark Order to win. And it turns out Reynolds got injured anyway, so he'll probably miss a little bit of time. I don't know how severe the injury is. I didn't see what the injury was. I just saw it.
He was on crutches. I know that.
Yeah.
Guys tweeted out. I don't know
fucked up foot.
Yeah, I don't know if we got a timetable.
But yeah, overall, I thought this was one of the best matches of the night.
Yeah.
It's a little weird that it was that early, but I mean, you got to anchor the beginning of the show with something because the next match was hot garbage. Jade Cargill and Athena.
Oh, yeah, this was bad. This was bad. I thought Jade's look was awful. I don't know who thought that was a good idea.
Yeah.
Was she doing She-Hulk?
What was she doing?
It was a
She-Hulk deal, yeah.
Okay. Well, it looks stupid. But I like both of these women, though. I like Athena.
Yeah, I mean, Cargill is just too green in the ring.
And that's the problem, is that she's in a company that really values what happens inside the ropes. Not only does the company, but the fan base does as well. And so, you know, she's 37-0. She does not feel like a big deal. I don't know how she feels to you, but like to me, it doesn't.
She only feels that way because they keep shoving that down our throats. But
it's not Goldberg in WCW where the fans are chanting his name, and it's not that.
Yeah, no.
They kind of just were like, whatever.
Yeah.
And like also, I don't know why they're so keen on showing like that Jade Cargill has a family and showing her daughter, because she literally cheated to win, and she's supposed to be a bad guy. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So just in kayfabe, like, what a good example to set for your daughter that when things don't go well, you should just cheat to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, obviously that's not what they're doing. You know, they're doing this weird boo Jade Cargill the performer, but Jade Cargill the person behind the character you should really admire. Like, yeah. It's a weird kind of shit, and I don't know. They need to be careful with Jade, because you might get the wrong kind of heat with her, where it's not boo, we want to see you lose, but boo, we wish you'd get off because we want to see somebody else.
There's other people that could carry that strap for a while.
And if you want to talk, but here's the thing, if you want to talk about crossover appeal in the women's division, she does have the most crossover appeal in terms of being in movies or TV shows or whatever. I mean, she has a presence about her in just a physical look, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be careful about how you play that on screen in these matches, because these matches are not good.
Right. And that was probably the worst of the night. I mean,
I think so.
Honestly, it was the worst of the night. So let's move on, because we got a bunch of stuff to go over. Next was FTR and Wardlow versus Jay Lethal and the Motor City Machine Guns. A lot of people were real excited about this one. I was a little underwhelmed. I didn't know anything about the Motor City Machine Guns really before, except for what you've told me. The match was fine. It's just, there was no story to push forward there. Really, it was an excuse to get FTR and Wardlow in the ring somehow.
And that's all it
on
is.
the card. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good match though. I did like the moment at the end when Dax's daughter gets to pin Sanjay Dutt.
Yeah, that's what I wrote in my notes, was like when Sanjay put on the shirt and it said 8-year-old brat, I was like, that's great heel work. You know, it's just sometimes the simple call is the right call to make. So like, hey Sanjay, get out there, put this shirt on, like make fun of this, because you know they cleared it with FTR and Dax, and like,
sure,
you know, Dax knows what's going to happen at the end with him bringing his girl back out, and you know, that is a cool moment that they'll have, right? You know, to talk about, and you know, had this match happen 5-6 years ago with Motor City Machine Guns and, you know, FTR, maybe would have been a bigger deal and a better match. But yeah, like you said, it's just an excuse to get Wardlow and FTR on the card. And yeah, I mean, I think you and I were both kind of hoping for the Satnam Singh powerbomb spot. Thought we might get it at the end. Maybe they tried it and couldn't pull it off right. I don't know.
Yeah, something happened. That's why they shifted, because, you know, you said the only reason they brought in the machine guns was because there was just no fluidity with that group, with Lethal and Satnam Singh and, you know, Sanjay.
We got Samoa Joe back as well.
Yeah, that was cool.
12 seconds in, he bled already. Got busted open the hard way. So it was cool to see Samoa Joe back. I didn't know this. I guess he's in a Twisted Metal movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's playing. Somebody said he was playing what's the dude?
The Voice or whatever?
No, the dude, you know, the ice cream guy.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
There's
about.
some listener out there being like, those dumb fucks. Like,
yeah.
I
played it some in college.
Is it Sweet Tooth?
Some shit years ago. Yeah,
I think it's Sweet Tooth.
That's close enough.
Anyway, he was in a movie. Now he's back.
Okay.
He still looks badass.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing much going here.
Yeah. So the next one, kind of big controversial one from the night for me. Ricky Starks versus Powerhouse Hobbs. I was really thinking they would put Starks over, let him just whoop the shit out of Hobbs. Didn't go that way. It was more or less a squash match.
I'm not mad about the booking decision. There were a lot of people online that were like, why would you do it that way? I'm not mad that they put Hobbs over because Hobbs needs something.
Sure.
What I'm mad about...
I'm just mad from a personal standpoint.
Well, it's the execution was awful. And I don't know if they got cut short for time or what, but like Ricky, we've talked about all the time. Ricky is right there, ready to be a megastar. And so, much like what we'll see in the next match coming up with the Acclaimed, had Ricky hit Hobbs with fucking 3 or 4 spears and a Rochambeau, and he's trying and he's scrapping, but he can't put this monster away because Hobbs is this fucking indomitable force that he can't conquer.
Right.
And then Hobbs cuts him off and gets the win. Well, now we've built something up. Now Ricky is this scrappy guy like we knew, and is never going to back down from a fight. And then it makes sense for them to continue this feud.
Yeah.
You know, then you can do some kind of gimmick match where it's a no DQ, where Ricky can even the playing field, whatever. But yeah, he just squashed him. Yeah. Hobbs just beat the hell out of him.
Thought it was weird as hell. But I mean,
it killed the crowd.
It did. Well, you know, I mean, from a realistic standpoint, Hobbs would clearly beat the shit out of Starks. But in terms of the story, I thought you needed to give a little bit of momentum to Starks. But
Starks has to fight. He has to fight more. He's got to get more offense in. He got next to no offense in.
I mean, you just let Hook beat him up a couple weeks ago. You're not doing our boy any favors, TK.
I don't, yeah. Particularly, I mean, if you want to look who's the next big baby face in this company, the crowd is telling you who it is.
Yeah.
It's this guy. He's got everything you want.
Yeah, his gear was fucking cool.
I like him in the long tights better.
Yeah.
I think it fits with the gloves. I thought that all looked cool. It was just like, yeah, the crowd was ready to see something. They wanted one of these favorites to win. You know, obviously they were hot for the trios match. But then they just kind of went down, and they were just kind of like, okay, well, we were really ready to cheer on Starks, and it just didn't happen.
Well, the next match of the night, if the crowd was getting lost, they got right back in this motherfucker because we had Swerve and Glory versus the Acclaimed. If you would have told me that this would have been probably the best match of the night beforehand, I would have laughed. But this one was on fire.
This was my match of the night. And like, I tweeted out on our account, like, I'm so happy for the Acclaimed because they clearly weren't supposed to be in this position. They weren't WWE guys. They didn't have a lot of buzz going for them on the indie circuit before they started in AEW. They were two singles guys that Tony just put together. They started on Dark. They got one little thing. They got the rapping gimmick with the entrance. And we're not talking about over weeks and months. AEW's been on TV for 3 years. This is over the course of years. They've gotten this thing over and got the fans on their side. And when their fucking music hit, that place went apeshit at the beginning. That's one of the loudest pops of the night. And that's what's so cool about pro wrestling is that, like, unlike a lot of other, you know, like a TV show or a movie, you get to follow these men and women for years. And you get to, sometimes you really get to see them rise through the ranks. And you've seen that with the Acclaim. Like, they're made. They are superstars. And they're a homegrown AEW talent. They deserve all the credit in the world. So do Swerve and Keith Lee.
Yeah.
Great call to realize that the crowd was not on their side and they start working heel. They have so much potential as a heel tag team. I mean, Keith Lee, just with his physical nature, and Swerve has this, like, he's got swagger for days, man, where he's just got that shit-eating grin.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a lot of people were thinking that Tony should have called an audible and you put the belts on the Acclaimed. I don't think that was the right call just in a vacuum. But given the context of where the crowd was at in Chicago, like we said, they kind of died down. I'm not so sure that I wouldn't have made that call if I was in the back and just said, hey, we'll figure this out. We'll figure out what to do later. But we need something. We need some kind of big moment because that crowd was so ready for something. And then, you know, they got it cut out from underneath them when Swerve and Keith Lee won. But, I mean, this was...
I think they'll get the belts at Grand Slam.
Yeah, probably, yeah. But, I mean, the false finishes in this thing, man, they had the crowd eating out of the palm of their hand. I mean, this was excellent through and through. Yeah. So. Yeah,
good stuff from top to bottom. The Acclaimed used to get on my nerves because I was like, this dude can't rap. He's just saying some stuff. But, like, he's not a good rapper, I don't think, but he's funny as shit.
He's timely with his references.
Yeah.
And they're good in the ring.
Yeah.
Like that, they're underrated in that aspect too. Anthony Bowens and Max Caster. First of all, I love Max Caster using the attitude adjustment as a finisher. You know, the callback to John Cena. Anthony Bowens, man, selling the knee, hell of a job that way. Like, such babyface stuff. Like the scissor me daddy ass is so over. It's so stupid. But
this is the number one selling
it.
T-shirt.
And that's a point of pride. Think about who's in this company.
Yeah.
Bryan Danielson had one of the biggest WrestleMania moments of all time. Is a beloved, one of the best wrestlers of his generation. Yeah. John Moxley, superstar. CM Punk, fucking superstar. Sting. MJF, Sting. And fucking these two guys that were on Dark for most of their career. The first ever pay-per-view match they ever had. They're the number one shirt in the company.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, that is what you can do. Like, that's the power of when you have something and you let these guys kind of be themselves and they get over. It really is beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
You know, as weird as what it is to have two guys, have a hand gesture that's based off a lewd act.
Yeah.
It is kind of beautiful to watch when there's thousands of people that get involved with it and the reaction shots when they come out. That the crowd, or when he says "scissor me" and the crowd just goes crazy. It's great stuff all through and through.
Yeah, well, they kept it up a little bit with the next one. We had the women's match, the title match with Britt Baker versus Jamie Hayter versus Toni Storm versus Hikaru Shida. This one kind of went the way I thought it would go with Toni Storm getting the belt. I think it's a nice change up for the women's division, and now you got a little heat with Britt Baker and Hayter. Kind of, breaking those up so it's not just like group.
Right.
Which, Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter, when they put a match together, could be fire.
I mean, you heard what the crowd was chanting. Whose name were they chanting for the majority of this match? Jamie Hayter. We've been saying on this podcast, she's a star. She's ready. She's got everything you need. I don't even care what her mic skills are like. If her mic skills suck, give her a manager.
Yeah.
She's got literally everything else.
But
the crowd was kind of bummed out when it wasn't her.
Yeah.
Because when it was just her in the ring, I think it was her and Sheeta, and they thought she might have a chance to win this belt, they were primed and ready.
Yeah, did you see Tony Storm kind of alluded afterward that maybe Rosa's injury was not real?
Well, yeah, that's it. Let me tell you something. These AEW press scrums, jumping back and forth here, if I was Tony Khan, I would set all these wrestlers down, and I'd be like, if you cannot do a press conference the way that Keith Lee and Swerve did it, because they're the only ones that knocked it out of the park, because they did it in character. Because what are these press conferences? These press conferences are just a way to... It's another opportunity for you to get your character over. Swerve and Keith knocked it out of the park. Punk did what he did. Tony Storm did the little thing, where she alluded Thunder Rosa may or may not be hurt. I guess, reports were like Thunder may have asked for her release. Maybe she didn't. Thunder maybe has heat with the locker room. Maybe she doesn't. Who the hell knows?
Thunder's husband or somebody came out yesterday and was like, where the fuck are y'all getting all this information, and why are you making it up?
So who knows? But yeah, it was a pretty poignant statement for Tony Storm just to be like, she says she's hurt. Okay. It's like, well, damn, all right.
Do you think that was just like a little of a work, or do you think she was shooting a little bit?
I mean, we've heard that Thunder is hard to work with.
Yeah.
So it could have been, a little veiled, a little work shooty element. She is the champion now, so she should be like, it doesn't matter who comes up here, they're going to get their ass beat.
Yeah.
But for her to just be like, she says she's injured, okay. It's like, well, again, this press conference scrum, I would have paid $20 just for the fucking press conference. You had Tony, the little clip of Tony Khan at this point, too many Tonys in AEW. Khan just being like, I'm not going to sit back and take this fucking shit anymore. Like that's gold. That's a golden 4 seconds that you can use for so much stuff. I mean, this thing was, and then Jericho, him being called on a hot mic, telling Khan like, hey, I need to talk to you afterwards. Some shit went down. Like it was just.
Oh really? I didn't miss that.
Yeah, Jericho was doing his thing, and then when he gets done, he's walking up, and the mic's caught him, telling Khan like, hey, I need to talk to you afterwards. Some shit went down.
What was that about?
The fight.
Oh, the fight.
I think Jericho heard about the fight. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because somebody there was an alternate angle from when Swerve and Keith were up on the press conference. There's a security guard that runs past the shot in the background, alluding to he ran to the fight.
Oh wow.
So yeah, these things are wild. I've seen people be like, "Oh, they're not going to do these press scrums anymore." Yes, the hell they are.
Yeah, why would they not?
WWE just put 67,000 people in an arena, and what's the one thing anyone wants to talk about this weekend? And it's the fucking press conference scrum. They're going to do these bitches again.
Yeah.
Just get ready, They say all publicity is good publicity, or whatever that phrase is. I think there's some truth to that. Obviously, you don't want it to be as embarrassing as what it was in the beginning, but
sure.
It has gotten people talking, and so if they can, and both the Tony Storm and in the CM Punk sense, if they can make some money off this, then I guess that's what they'll try to do.
Yeah. So the next one was Jungle Boy versus Christian Cage. And at first, it was a point of contention for me because I was like, okay, why'd y'all come out here and build this match up? Probably started a little too soon, but you built it up as a big thing and only have to have Cage squash Jungle Boy. But then I found out later that Cage is injured with the same injury that Punk has and will be out around 8 months. So I was like, oh, okay, well, he couldn't fucking wrestle. That's why he had him squashed.
I mean, it was just hit and reset on this feud. For external circumstances that are out of their control. Hell of a bump on that fucking pyro grid.
That looked terrible. I mean, terrible in the terms of it fucking hurt.
Oh, yeah.
Not like they didn't sell it. It looked like it hurt like a motherfucker.
And I bet that shit was hot.
Had to have been.
From the thing. So, like...
You got pyro blasting off every 15 minutes over here.
Right. So, maybe it'll give... I guess they'll do Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus now. We didn't see anything from Dynamite.
Yeah. And I think he hinted at a name change. Lucha did.
Oh, did he?
I think so, on his
Okay.
Instagram or something.
Well, good. We've only been talking about that since this podcast started. How stupid it is to have a heel named Luchasaurus. He can keep the mask if he wants, but change the name.
I think they're moving in the direction of he'll get a name change.
So let's change Luchasaurus' name and have him be a monster heel because he looks like he can be one.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's present this dude in the best possible light. And let's drop the Jungle Boy. He can't, guys. He can't be Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Jungle Jack Perry. You cannot keep being a boy at 26 years old. That's the part that doesn't work. The jungle stuff is cool. Jungle Jack Perry. Boom. There you go. There he is.
JR's been calling him that for the last 3 years. Might as well roll with it.
I mean, JR's only been doing this for most of his life, so
yeah,
maybe we should listen to him every once in a while.
At first, I was like, well, JR just doesn't know what he's not. He's just saying whatever comes out of his mouth. But I think JR is like my Aunt Brenda. When she had her first grandchild, my cousin decided that the baby's name was going to be Chelsea. And my grandmother said, that's not that baby's name. That baby's name is Sassy. And my cousin said, I'm not naming my baby Sassy. And she said, I don't care if you name her that or not. That's that baby's name. My Aunt Brenda's never once called that child Chelsea.
There you go.
And most of the family knows her as Sassy.
There you go.
So that's what's happening right there.
Jungle Jack Perry.
Yeah, that's all JR just saying, trying to make a thing happen.
Yeah.
So next up, Bryan Danielson and Chris Jericho. Again, great match. Point of contention for me. Why are we putting Jericho over in these matches still?
I'm not mad at that booking decision either because Danielson at any point can get his heat back.
Sure.
The point of contention I think we've had with Jericho is when it was like, man, Eddie Kingston's right there ready to make a big babyface run, and he gets cut off by Jericho. Or, I'm sure we're missing something else. We've talked about Jericho's booking, but like in this situation, I'm not mad at it. Plus, the bigger story that they're trying to get over in this feud is Daniel Garcia.
Sure.
And so with Garcia doing the thing where he's trying to tell Jericho not to cheat, and then Jericho cheats, so I'm not mad at this. It was a really great match. The crowd at this point was exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, the crowd was just so dead for this. And also, talk about corniness factor. We mentioned Jade's look just being off. Having the fucking dude come out to sing to Danielson's entrance and he looks like a damn Backstreet Boy reject is who thinks that this is a good idea? It's not cool.
I thought it was awkward as fuck.
And I mean, no disrespect to the guy. I think his name's Elliot Taylor. It's a good song, whatever. I agree with a lot of people on Twitter, and I thought it was a female vocalist. So that's a little, but whatever. But like having the dude with the shirt off and the chain, and
yeah,
that's not that's WWE shit. You know what I mean? Like that's the sports entertainment type stuff.
Yeah.
And you can't do it as cool as what WWE does because why? WWE has a whole fucking band when they do that shit. Or a drum line, and there's 50 people that are doing the thing,
Yeah, didn't Cody have a band that does his theme music? Didn't he have a band one year?
Yeah, but it's like a rock band, and there was the whole band, and they didn't have their shirts off, and gold chains, and white basketball pants like it's 1995, I wore white pants like that when I wrestled, but they were rip away, and I was a dipshit heel. So, like, it was, on the nose. He was being serious.
Where the fuck do you even get rip away pants?
You gotta buy them online. You can't just walk. I bought my shit on Amazon. Like $25. But man, you want to talk about reaction? I had a whole. Maybe I'll try to find a picture and we'll post it on Instagram. I had a white Adidas jacket with white pants, and I'd ripped them bitches off. People hated it. I had a faux hawk.
I've been meaning to get some of those clips from you to put them on our Instagram page.
Yeah, we need to put them up on there. People hated me. I was just a cocky, arrogant son of a bitch. But yeah, rip-away pants will get you heat, man. If you're an indie wrestler out there, do rip-away pants. That's a free gimmick you can have. White rip-away pants.
Kind of says asshole.
Oh, absolutely. You can't even fucking if you go to.
I mean, that's Andrade, right?
Yeah, but Andrade's is cool looking though.
Yeah,
it's a pinstripe suit.
Yeah,
and he's got the mask. I was a 17-year-old kid with a faux hawk and a sucker in my mouth. Also do a sucker. Nobody's doing a sucker anymore.
Yeah, you know this. You're a fucking asshole if you're walking around with a sucker.
Hell yeah. So if you're out there, sucker, rip away pants, instant heat.
Where did you come up with suckers?
I just needed something. Like, I needed something, and like Mr. Perfect had chewing gum, and I was like, what has somebody not done? Oh, a fucking Tootsie Roll Pop. That'll work.
You could be Matt Menard working the shit out of that gum.
Yeah, but I couldn't work it as well. I didn't have the crazy eyes like what Daddy Magic has. If I had crazy eyes like that, yeah, that's what I would have done. But maybe we'll find some pictures and post them to our Instagram.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. So up next, House of Black versus Darby Allin, Sting and Miro. Good match. Maybe the last time we see Malachi, at least for a while. He got a conditional release day before yesterday.
Yeah.
From what I've read, he wanted to take a break to get control of his mental health, and I think some of the storylines and things from the House of Black, maybe if you get too much into that character, it can fuck you up a little bit. But I had heard stuff about his mental health a month or two ago. But I don't know if it showed it on the video, but shout out again, Daniel Chrysler said that he took a bow at the end of the night, and he got his release, but conditional in that he can't go back to WWE. But I think he's still got 3 or 4 years left on his contract.
Yeah, and I wrote here in my notes like this was a booking decision I really had a problem with, but in hindsight, now knowing what we know, it makes sense. And again, skipping forward before we talk about the match, you would have to think that if Malachi was still there, them stripping the Bucks and Omega from the Trios title, probably instead of going to Death Triangle, probably would have went to them, right?
Yeah.
They were the next kind of up thing, so, it's unfortunate. I like Malachi a lot.
I do too, yeah. He's got the coolest entrance in wrestling.
You just have to ask, well, again, I don't want to get into that. He needs to work on his mental health and get some clarity in that kind of situation. And, I think Tony would welcome him back with open arms. I think you have to keep this House of Black thing going. I think they need a new leader.
Yeah, I mean, well,
it's a cool gimmick.
Brody King is a fucking monster. You can make him the leader.
Yeah, but I just think it's such a prime opportunity either to bring somebody else in or to elevate somebody.
Bray Wyatt.
Well, Bray Wyatt might be going back to WWE.
Yeah.
If he was, that is the play. Because he's such a creative force. I mean, you want to talk about Malachi being super creative. Bray is on that level, if not above, right? Yeah. But they had a really cool entrance. The one thing I wrote in my notes here is Julia Hart looked just like Stevie Nicks. Julia Hart looked like every single girl here in Alabama that's about to, when the weather turns cool here in about 4 weeks.
Spooky season,
straight up looking like Stevie Nicks out there.
Everybody's gonna be playing fucking Gypsy,
right? Which I guess kudos to how iconic Stevie Nicks is, you know. But yeah, I mean, this was a fine match. It's always cool to see Sting and Darby.
Sting moves better than a lot of 40-year-old dudes that I know. Myself included. I mean, I'm 45, but myself included.
And he's in his 60s?
Yeah.
It's fucking unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a legend in every sense of the word. He's one of my top 2 favorite wrestlers. My first wrestling memory is watching WCW with Sting and the Crow makeup, being in the rafters, and just being like, and I was probably 7 at the time, 7 or 8, being like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And he's just been a star for so long. Nobody's ever said a bad word about him. Just a true legend. And so it's cool to see him. And I think Darby's kind of invigorated a little bit of that passion for wrestling again.
Yeah.
Hopefully Darby doesn't fucking kill him with these if he convinces him to do one of these stunts. I showed you the video of Darby jumping over his house.
Yeah.
That kid is fucking wacko. He's cool as shit, but damn, he's wacko.
Yeah, talk about presentation and stepping it up for AEW for pay-per-views. He usually does, but his makeup and his gear and everything looked great the other night.
Yeah, I mean, he's always on point. fan favorite. And so we'll see how they parlay this. He's in the. Is Darby in the tournament?
It's Darby versus Sammy Friday
Yeah.
night, I believe.
So we'll see what happens. I mean,
I hope they put him over Sammy, just because, God, please. Neither one of them is going to go far in the tournament. They're going to get beat by whoever they face next. But
right.
please just put Darby over Sammy.
I mean, Sammy still got that heat, man. Sammy is. He's him getting. I don't know if there's ever been anybody in wrestling that is better at getting hit by a moving vehicle than Sammy Guevara. It really is an art form. Like, this is 3 times now. And if you don't know what we're talking about, he got hit by, was it a golf cart on the pre-show? Whatever the fuck it was. Ruby and Ortiz.
Yeah.
Now, coming out of that, I mean, they were reckless. And 1 almost broke Ruby's neck. And then 2, I guess Ty hit her with a knee and broke her nose probably.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Sammy is... He has an arrogance about him. I guess it's well earned. He's a handsome dude. He's got a hot wife. He's talented in the ring. But, yeah, being hit by a moving vehicle is an art form. So, shout out to him.
He's 3 for 3.
He's 3 for 3, man.
So the last match, obviously, of the night is Jon Moxley versus CM Punk. Good match.
It was great, yeah.
Didn't really expect any less of it, honestly. The outcome is weird now, especially with what happened Sunday evening. Like, I mean, it's just so weird. It's kind of overshadowed, like, the scrum has overshadowed everything else. Like, I honestly don't. I remember thinking, I jumped up and yelled, "Oh shit," and a couple of spots at the end. And then, of course, you get MJF
right
at the end. But yeah, I mean, I guess it looked like, we mentioned before that Moxley was going to take a little time off. Punk was going to have the belt, which, I mean, seems kind of like an odd move after him going into business for himself a few weeks ago with the calling Hangman Page out in the ring. It seems kind of a weird move to put the belt on Punk. But, I mean, I get it, storyline-wise with things and how things are going. But it's all very weird now that he's injured. We'll get to this in a minute. The titles are stripped, blah, blah, blah. It seemed like it was an exciting and strange finish to a show to me.
Yeah, and, we've already hit on the MJF stuff, so we won't repeat ourselves there. I'm actually surprised they put Punk over in the way they did, because you and I had both predicted after the squash match, we were like, oh, now there is something in front of the camera to justify Punk going heel, because all this little stuff had started, going out from behind the scenes, started leaking out. Now, in retrospect, having seen All Out, the fucking squash 2 weeks ago makes no sense.
No.
None. And this is Hogan level stuff in WCW.
I thought it worked at the moment.
We both thought we both were okay with it in the moment because we thought this is leading to something else. I'm not buying that his foot is 100% and just beat Jon Moxley like that. Now, I think we both thought, oh, a heel turn's coming because he's got to cheat to beat Moxley because the foot's going to go out. Well, no, he just did a 2022 version of fucking hulking up and doing the point, and that's just what happened. And so reports are that Moxley is the one that kind of pitched this. I think I would have to tell Moxley, like, dude, you're already a made man. We can't do this squash 2 weeks before this pay-per-view. Because if this is the case, what they should have done 2 weeks ago is wrestle for 10 minutes, have the foot go out, and then Moxley beats him there. Not Moxley runs through him in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
That's... we thought a heel turn was coming. So, I mean, that's... And I'm not saying we were wrong. We just thought something else was going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, the booking was questionable of this thing. Because, yeah, it was odd that they were just gonna roll through with this thing and have it be hunky dory.
Because okay, let's say that Punk didn't tear his pec, and that Punk didn't go scorched earth at the scrum.
Right.
Then he's the champ right now, and a lot of the shit that popped off on Dynamite doesn't happen. The booking going forward is way different. But because of all the shit that happened at the press conference, we got a completely different situation, like in the course of a few hours.
Yeah, like was the plan that they were just going to run Punk MJF back in the same heel face dynamic after we had just seen it? I don't know if I would have been that interested in
Only
that.
We've mentioned, I guess we probably mentioned on the show, would be that we have been thinking he was teasing this heel turn, was like you got him heel, but you bring back MJF in more of a face role, right?
Yeah, you have CM Punk have a reign of terror, and the one guy who can stop him, MJF's fucking music hits, and it's him.
And we go back to you're the bad guy here.
Yeah, except now you actually have turned CM Punk heel, and MJF comes back as the returning babyface who is going to be the one capable of dethroning this monster.
Yeah, because, I mean, let's not get it twisted. MJF was clearly not just sitting around eating cheeseburgers and chicken wings and drinking beers while he was off.
Oh, yeah, he came back jacked.
Yeah.
I will say...
And he let him know.
Dynamite Wednesday, he leaves with no shirt on. We get a shot of his back. A little bit of acne on his back, which if you know what that is, you know what that is. All I'm saying is if he was in the NFL and he came back, he probably would have got a letter in his locker being like, you are randomly selected for the NFL wellness drug test policy.
Oh, I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, I mean, if you do a little steroids, the little back acne is the symptom, which I'm not saying he did. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm not even saying that that's a bad thing. Fuck it. It's pro wrestling. It's theater. You want to do whatever in your body to make you look the way you want to look. I don't give a shit. Do it. But yeah, he looks like he legitimately put on a solid 20 pounds of muscle. I mean, he looks... his fucking arms in one of these pictures he took, he looks fucking massive. Yeah. And it's cut to shit. So, I mean, kudos to him for... He clearly is putting in the work. MJF clearly wants to be the best. He has certainly been a genre-bending talent in his own right. I mean, you want to talk about the blurring of the lines between what's real, what's a work. I mean, that man's in character 24/7. You don't know where MJF, the person behind the character, and the character begins and ends.
Yeah, because a lot of times on Twitter you see the wrestlers tweeting shit that are out of character, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, yesterday, before the show, you get a picture of him on a private jet, and I forgot what the phrase he used, but it was the equivalent of, I'm coming back and I'm jacked, or something like that, right?
Yeah. I think he tweeted buff, which I think was for Buffalo.
But the implication...
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, at least that's the way I read it.
And tweeting at WWE guys.
Oh, I missed that.
There was that too. What was it? Baron Corbin? I don't know who it was.
That's
anyway.
Funny. So
yeah, wrapping out All Out. All Out was good. The main event was good.
Yeah. Some
of the booking is questionable now in hindsight, but of course all that shit is up in flames now because we are where we are right now.
Right. So All Out's done. Media scrum. We got through that. Out of the gate, last night, everybody's like, how's Tony Khan going to handle this? About an hour before the show, there was a tweet and a Facebook message and all that shit went out. It was like, Tony Khan will address the media scrum and implications involved, blah, blah, blah. We had heard that a lot of folks were suspended that were involved in all that altercation. Well, Tony opens the show and says, hey, I'm vacating the world title. But guess what? Trios titles are vacated as well. I didn't even think about that. I didn't think that was a possibility because I had heard Punk was injured, so I was like, okay, well, what are they going to do? Fucking interim thing again? Because this is bullshit. Nobody wants to see that for 8 months. I mean, it's floored me because I was like, okay, Tony grew a pair and was like, quit fucking around. Yeah. They had the player or talent meeting beforehand. Still not a lot of info about what happened there. But as you mentioned, they hit the reset button real hard, and we'll get to some of those moments here and there. But I thought that was pretty brave of him. I mean, not brave. Brave's not the right word. It was the right call.
It's right. You got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it. This is the first time Tony's in this position too. AEW is a growing company. Like we've said before, I don't know if anyone envisioned it would be this big this quickly. I mean, doing 1 million viewers in 3 months. I mean, fucking Raw is doing 2. So to do half of what Raw is doing, and WWE has been an established brand for 5+ decades here in this country. I mean, it's pretty impressive stuff. So yeah, he vacates the titles, and then here comes MJF to start the show, and just what outstanding work he is.
Yeah.
If he wants to be, he talks about the bidding war in 2024. I don't know if you let that guy walk to the other company in 2024.
No, I mean, the only way that happens is if you refuse to go, just keep spending money. He get to a certain number. You got to pick a number and be like, I'm not going over this. Start out low, obviously.
I mean, he can be this company's Ric Flair.
Yeah.
He has that level of charisma about him.
No doubt.
And Flair, he's in 92, he goes to WWE, but he only does it for a little bit and comes right back. Like, I don't know if you let that guy walk. And just the subtext, I don't remember who pointed this out on Twitter, but being like, MJF's whole opening promo was basically just was a very subtle knock on CM Punk, right? Obviously, they probably can't say Punk's name. They can't reference any of the brawl because there's investigations going on. There's a third party.
I saw a thing right before we recorded that was like, Tony Khan pretty much said all that he could legally last night.
Yeah, so they have their arms tied, but what you can do is get creative with it. MJF comes down. He's in a fucking jersey of the hometown guy. He does the lean up against, let the fans hit you on the chest. He gets in the ring. He goes down to both knees. He basically just played a whole arc of CM Punk's time there.
Yeah.
And then he's doing this faux baby face, which we could all see. Like, he's putting on an act. And then here comes Jon Moxley. And, you've got all this bullshit surrounding the company. And so it's a smart choice to open up Dynamite with your biggest heel and your biggest babyface standing in the center of the ring. And finally the mask comes off with MJF. He does the heel stuff again. He leaves. Moxley's in the middle of the ring, and he just cuts the most babyface of babyface promos that I was like, this dude earns every single penny he gets.
Yeah. He
looked legitimately pissed off and embarrassed.
He wanted to be on a beach with a cold drink in his hand is where he wanted to be.
But that's why he is the MVP of AEW.
Yeah.
Like, whenever you get in a pinch, this is the guy you call.
Call your guy.
And he fucking hits a home run every time he's up there. And just everything he did, talking about, like, I don't remember exactly what he said, but like leaving all the bad stuff, letting it die with the last generation, like, again, just a baby face through and through. And then him at the end being like, this is winning time and it's time to be a legend. Drops the mic. The fucking place goes apeshit. Like, it's just, he's gold, man. Everything about him.
Yeah. That's why you bring him in, He was one of the guys, one of the 3 that was mentioned and that spoke at the talent meeting. Him and Jericho and Danielson.
And he is, again, keep talking about CM Punk here, but like, CM Punk caught a lot of shit when he was in WWE because he liked to call himself a locker room leader, and guys like Booker T and all that shit like laughed at him. Because if you have to call yourself a locker room leader, you're not a locker room leader. Moxley, on the other hand, I mean, he by all reports, he wanted to come back because the company needed him. And just to think about it too, like, I've called him like pro wrestling's folk hero just because this guy's not only doing this shit at AEW, he's doing the shit in GCW.
Yeah.
He's showing up with these other little indie wrestling promotions, I think a few months ago, Eddie Kingston couldn't make an appearance. And there's a YouTube clip, And they're like, oh, Eddie Kingston couldn't be here tonight, but we found a replacement. And then fucking Wild Thing just starts, and here comes John Moxley walking through this, and it's a gym of 150 people. And you got one of the biggest wrestling stars on the planet. It's just there.
Yeah.
Like, why? Because he just loves wrestling, man. This is everything. He represents everything that what AEW is about, which is AEW caters to this hardcore wrestling fan base that love the art form, that love the sport, and he is that personified through and through. And so he is the guy. You don't always have to put the belt on him, but there's not a bigger star in this company than that guy right there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say MJF, whatever. I guess he might be a bigger star. He's certainly up there, but like Moxley is the heart and soul of this company. I hope they keep running with the ace of AEW and make some T-shirts off that. And it looks like they might be gearing up for MJF versus Moxley.
Yeah.
Having that program. There's a lot of leeway there that you can do with, the ex-WWE guy and the guy that wants to go to WWE. We didn't even talk about that. MJF dropping Cody Rhodes and Triple H and the best con in wrestling, jolly old Saint Nick. I mean, he's a piece of shit heel through and through. And it's everything's great about it. So
yeah, I mean he owns that shit.
But yeah, this was a great way to start the show.
Yeah. So one of the things that Tony said about vacating the titles they would immediately start a tournament, and we got the first match of that immediately. We got Bryan Danielson versus Hangman Adam Page, two of the best in the game right now. It's hard to be mad at the booking on it, like, because I'm a Hangman Adam Page fan and have been for a hot minute, but like you bring in Bryan Danielson for a reason. People are going to watch Bryan Danielson, right? So like the fan in me really wanted to see Hangman get the title, or not the title, but the win. But at the same time, like, I ain't mad at Danielson going over last night either.
I mean, again, that's why I wasn't mad when Jericho went over him at the pay-per-view. I was like, because at any point, this dude can just get his heat back because he is...
Should have been the main event of the show, in my opinion.
I think so, too. They wanted to do Garcia because it was his hometown, but I would be interesting to see what the quarters for AEW look like in terms of the ratings. Hopefully not a lot of people switched it off because we'll talk about the Garcia-Yuta match, but that was great, too. But, yeah, I think Hangman and Danielson should have main evented the show. This was the third match in their rivalry, and I mean, it's just three bangers. Like, this is just what these guys do. That's a pay-per-view level match that you got on free television.
I mean, yeah,
it's wild.
It was pretty solid, top to bottom again last night. The last couple of 3 shows have been fucking great.
And this, you mentioned it when we started talking about Dynamite. This felt like a reset.
Yeah, this was stars.
This was, hey, we know that all the shit has gone down this weekend. Here is what AEW is. We are these guys. We are inside the squared circle action. These are our top stars. These are the guys that are going to carry us. It felt like everybody had a little bit of more juice last night, too. That everyone was like
even
out to prove something.
Well, I don't want to cut short the Danielson Page dialogue, but I did have 3 small points I want to touch on. The little juice with Jungle Boy's backstage promo. Like, we've been saying, we need a little fire out of Jungle Boy, right? And this was the right way to do it. In a pre-tape interview where you can direct him up, coach him up, choose your best take. He had a little fire. I like the little spark there from Jungle Boy.
Yep. Again, an AEW original, which is another theme of this episode.
Right. And then you had the Acclaim coming out. Everybody was like, oh, shit, what's he going to say? What's he going to say?
Perfect.
And then, bam, you get the interruption from Swerve and Keith Lee.
If there was... So the top heel move of the weekend was Punk. The second biggest heel move of the week was Swerve Strickland cutting off the Acclaim's rap.
Yeah. And everybody was pissed.
And again, just that guy's got swagger, man.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah.
He's going to be a top-level heel for those guys.
Yeah.
For sure.
So then, speaking of juice again, Wardlow comes out and was like, everybody on the internet says that, I've lost my swagger and I'm not the same Wardlow I was. And then, bam, he crushes the shit out of Tony Nese.
Yep.
And puts some fire on the microphone, throws that motherfucker down, and bounces.
Yep.
Get in, get out.
Again, AEW original.
Yeah.
That's another guy. Like, that's all these guys who have been there from the company since day one, for the most part, were featured.
Yeah.
And yeah, he has lost some momentum because I don't think they've booked him well. So again, since this is a reset, let's go. Let's figure out something else for him.
Yeah.
I don't know who you put him up against. Do you do Miro and Wardlow?
I mean, that'd be a banger.
He needs something big.
A little competition.
He needs some competition, but he needs a long, multiple week drawn out program that'll really elevate him.
Yeah.
I get putting him up against Tony Nese last night because you have to establish something. But he needs some kind of challenger to rise up and really try to go after that title to give him – I want to see more Wardlow on the mic. I want to see, if we want to cultivate somebody to be the next big star of our company, I mean, that guy's got all the potential in the world. He's got the look.
Yeah.
If you want to do a fucking Hoss fight, put that sumbitch up against Powerhouse Hobbs.
Well, in the report yesterday was that they're gearing up to put him on a little run. So maybe this is it.
If WWE likes to do, big meaty men slapping meat, and Tony Khan be like, hey, I got two motherfuckers here. I got two meaty beats, sons of bitches. Like, we'll put them up against each other, and we'll do a damn Hoss fight.
Right.
And so that'll be, I'll fucking watch that.
Right.
For sure.
So match-wise, next up, I've got Best Friends versus Death Triangle for the trios title. I mean, there was no more tournament for this one. It was just like, hey, I'm putting these guys up for the title.
Yeah. Because
they were in the bracket, right?
Right.
That was leading up to it. Good call. Cassidy's had a sort of thing with Pac for a while. And we were talking about Malachi Black's entrance earlier, and I thought he's got the coolest one. The Death Triangle entrance fucking hits hard, too, for me.
So this was a new entrance, right? I haven't seen this before.
I think used it once, I feel like, a couple weeks ago. I feel like I had seen it.
Okay, I felt like I hadn't seen it, and I was like, holy shit, this is awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
I mean, these three guys are just amazing.
That's a great team.
It's a hell of a team. When they paired them up first, I was like, huh. But then you see them in the ring, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. I mean, they're awesome.
Yeah, and this was a great match, I thought.
I mean, yeah, this is a hell of a match. I have in my notes, I just wrote banger. This is just what AEW does.
Yeah, man. Beretta goes hard.
Yeah.
I mean, all these dudes go hard. Chuck Taylor doesn't go as hard as the others, but, Chuck's still pretty fucking good in the ring.
Everybody got their shine in this match. But, I mean, again, Pac is so underrated, man. Yeah, I mean, we talk about best wrestlers in the world. He doesn't come up that much. But
yeah, but his body control and everything, it's insane.
I mean, his finishing move, the Black Arrow, there's not many people in the world that can do that.
Right.
But then also his ability to just sell, he gets spiked on a DDT, but he brings his body, it's just, the athletic ability is just off the charts. I don't know. I think, I'm not trying to pick on Alex Abrahantes yet, but I feel like if they had another manager, this thing would really you'd really have something here with this group. Because for as good as Phoenix and Penta and Pac are, none of them are really great on the mic. Now, obviously, Penta and Phoenix have a language barrier there.
Sure.
And Pac just is what he is. He's good at being a brute. But I feel like they might, if they would benefit from having somebody else with them.
Yeah.
I think. But, shout out to Pac. He's been with the company for a long time, hasn't got a lot of opportunity, and he's the first simultaneous champ. All-Atlantic Championship, Tag, and Trios Championship. First one in AEW. Nobody's done that before. So
really?
Nobody's had two belts at one time.
I was trying to think about it, but I don't. Yeah, you're right.
So he's the first one to do it, and, shout out to him.
I'll be damned.
So I don't know who they run them up against next.
Yeah.
Because I think you want to... You've done a lot of moving around with this trios title, so maybe you want to just settle things down, let these guys have a kind of a long run with it.
Yeah,
I don't know who you put them in a program with necessarily. They'll probably rack up a bunch of wins. I'm sure the Trust Busters will be run up against them and they'll smash them. And
yeah,
but with Malachi leaving, That probably would have been the call. Death Triangle versus House of Black,
Yeah.
because they've already had a feud. So I don't know what they do. Should be interesting to see who they pair up against them.
So there's one last match for the night that we'll cover. Daniel Garcia versus Wheeler Yuta for the ROH Pure Championship.
Yeah.
You know, we've been hyping Garcia up for the last few weeks. I was curious to see what the outcome would be on this. I was like, are they going to take it off of Yuta already? He hasn't had it all that long. And then I realized, because they said something about it being Garcia's hometown, I was like, okay, well, that's the way that's going to go.
Yeah.
But that fucking finisher looks painful as hell.
Yeah.
I thought he was fixing to kill Yuta at one point.
And you know, we talked shit about Danielson's entrance with the singer because it was corny as hell. This was not corny. Garcia's entrance with the rapper, I forget his name, West Side Gun, I think is what it was. Fucking badass. This shit was so cool. Like, the song was cool. His coming out with it was cool. I told you, like, you said you didn't notice, but they had bought two rows right there in the front with just all dudes in red hoodies.
Yeah.
Which I think one of the guys, I don't know if they were all the same hoodie or if they were different. They obviously were all red. One of them had the face of the bunny on it, or her, like, bloody face, because, you know, they're from Buffalo.
Oh.
So Butcher and the Blade and Bunny are all from Buffalo as well.
Okay.
So one of them had her face on it. So that was cool to see. And, yeah, Garcia and Yuta, they've already had a ton of matches together. This is a match that you're going to be able to run for years and years. I think Yuta is like 26 or 27. Garcia is 24, 25. These guys have outstanding chemistry. You want to talk about improvement, not only in the ring, but in their character work since they've really been positioned in AEW. They have grown leaps and bounds. And, yeah, this was a hell of a moment. And a hell of a moment, too, for probably Garcia to win a title in his hometown. And then also have someone who is, for real, in real life, his hero, Bryan Danielson, come down to the ring and put the title on Garcia that Danielson retired because Danielson was the Pure Champion and won Ring of Honor Championship and retired that Pure Championship. And he comes and puts the belt on Garcia. That's just got to be a hell of a moment for him. And then also it's going to set up, you know, Jericho coming out.
Yeah, because
Jericho coming out with his look and the camera just being close up with him. I was getting a kick out of that.
Yeah.
That was hysterical.
Because they had made the whole thing of you didn't come celebrate or help us
Right.
at the pay-per-view, so you're on your own here tonight.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm still in your corner, but I'm not going to help you out.
Yeah, and so who knows where they go from here with Garcia's story. You know, at some point it's probably going to lead to Garcia versus Jericho.
I mean, it has to, yeah.
It has to, yeah. But, yeah, this was just another great match. Like we talk about it all the time. For as much crap as we give the booking decisions sometime with AEW, I mean, holy shit. they put on wrestling classic after wrestling classic. It's to the point now where, like, we're a little bit spoiled by it.
Yeah.
You know, not to single out WWE again, but I watched Clash at the Castle, and, like, the Gunther and Sheamus match was fucking awesome. Like, that was great. Roman and Drew was, you know, some of those main event matches in WWE become a little spammy. Like, it's just false finish. Like, dude hits a big move, false finish, big move, false finish, and it kind of, you know, up and down. But, like, the rest of the matches on that card were just like, eh. Fucking AEW. I mean, they'll give you 11 matches, and 8 of them are going to be out of the park home runs.
Yeah, for sure. You know, we complain a little bit about the run times, but
Yeah.
it's a packed Sunday night.
It's a packed show. And
you get your $50 worth.
yeah, so it's cool. We got a lot of there's a lot of uncertainty in the air surrounding AEW right now, and so it's curious to see how they sort of just settle everything. And I think last night was a good example. Let's just calm down. Let's put our AEW originals on there for the most part. Here are the guys who started this thing. The Sammy Guevaras, the Darbys, they're all going to be featured in this tournament.
I mean, with the exception of Yuta and Garcia.
Yeah.
It was like you said.
Yeah. And so this is, we got Grand Slam here coming up in a few weeks, and then we have Full Gear up in November. So they can get this turned around, though.
Yeah, for sure.
They can get it turned around.
They made a lot of the right first steps by vacating the titles, handing out suspensions, and there was no mincing words really last night. They sent a lot of messages with Mox's promo, and then Jericho was like, "This is my locker room."
Yeah.
You said it was something kind of shitty for people to say that earlier or whatever, like kind of what corny. How did you say it? Like you were talking about it. But for somebody like Punk to say that, but like for somebody like Jericho, who was the first champion, who was there from the beginning.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, it says a lot. Like, Moxley and Jericho had just come off of WWE runs, and I mean, Jericho was a star, but he was past his prime.
Sure.
He was in his 40s. Moxley could have easily signed another contract with WWE, and he'd still be there. Now, would he be as big a star in WWE as what he is in AEW now? Probably not. But he put a lot on the line to take a chance on AEW. And so, to have a guy like Punk come in and really, attempt to derail this thing. They had a pay-per-view, and the only thing anybody talked about was all his horse shit.
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I think you gotta let him bounce, or you gotta send him bouncing.
And you gotta let Young Bucks and the Omega know too. We talked about it. Strip them of their EVP titles. You can't be management and act this way. Now you can. I think you would still use them as big stars because they are big stars. Sure. And if you say I'm going to strip you of your EVP title, and they say if you do that we're going to walk. Then I think if you're Tony, here's the line in the sand. I got to let you walk, Yeah. You have to send a message to that locker room that no one is above the 3 fucking letters on our shirts. AEW. There's not a single person that's above this. There's not me, not any of you wrestlers. Like, what we're trying to do, we started off, we wanted to have an alternative for wrestling fans who felt disenfranchised by what had been the mainstream wrestling that WWE was putting out there for years. And so you're not going to jeopardize that. And also, too, there are so many people behind the scenes that work at AEW. The audio technicians, the post-production people, the seamstresses, the catering people. Yeah,
and Moxley made mention of a lot of that.
Yeah, those are people that, they bust their ass because they believe they're wrestling fans and they believe in that product. And they don't get the admiration of the fans because the fans don't know who they are. Yeah. They don't get the love on Twitter. Nobody wears their T-shirts because they don't have any. But yet they come every single week and they help make this locker room look like stars. And so I'm not even talking about Punk. For anybody in that locker room to try to jeopardize these people's livelihood. Because, if anything happens to a lot of those wrestlers, a lot of them will be just fine. Some of them will go to WWE. Some of them will still work the indies. They could go to Impact or whatever. If the fucking lighting grip who, sets the lights up on the stage, if his job gets axed because AEW goes under, where the hell is he going to find another job at? He's got to uproot his whole family.
Yeah, there's probably people that quit good jobs to go work for AEW.
And so if I'm Tony Khan, my message in this meeting I would have Wednesday, and he probably said something to the effect, probably not as, animated as what I would say it, but I would be like, if you don't like this place, there's the fucking door. Good luck. Yeah. This is I sign the checks, and I apologize. I would apologize to everybody for letting it bubble up the way that it has. But I would take ownership of it and say it stops with me now.
Yeah, I mean, and there's, floating around the last couple of days is that Tony Schiavone is kind of stepping in to be sort of Tony Khan's right-hand man.
Oh, yeah, because they're seeing the ghost of WCW bubbling up again. And they're like, oh, shit. Yeah, you talk about Arn, Tony Schiavone. I mean, these guys, they saw it happen with WCW.
Yeah, I think it's probably a smart move because those guys, those guys look up to Schiavone. They may not respect Tony Khan, but they respect Tony Schiavone.
And, you have guys like Arn Anderson, Mark Henry, Paul White, Tony Schiavone, Jerry Lynn, Dean Malenko. You're talking about the best of the best, over probably 100 years of wrestling experience. if you're TK, you lean on those guys.
Yeah.
You know, ask for advice. What should we be doing? And you know, the in-ring product is fantastic. It's all the behind-the-scenes, the infrastructure stuff that they need to get a handle on.
Yeah.
And to me, like, we've talked about it before. You get a writing team, 3 or 4 people that answer to you. You guys sit in a room. You work out the creative that way. That's going to solve some of those booking issues. A lot of the talent relations issues and the producer stuff, they've already addressed that a little bit, right? With Tony Schiavone, they've moved guys up. So, like, I think it's getting on track. You know, it's just that it's in the shadow of a WWE machine that has this thing down to a granular level and operates at such high efficiency.
They've been doing it forever.
And again, they've been doing it forever.
But that's why you lean on Schiavone and them that have been there before.
Exactly. And, you know, Arn has been in that WWE machine. He knows what it looks like. And a lot of that is, you know, to Vince McMahon's credit. That's the ship that he ran, you know. Could you see CM Punk doing what he did if fucking Vince McMahon was sitting right beside him?
No.
Vince probably would have smacked the shit out of him. So, but they did that because they don't, like you said, they don't really respect Tony, or they don't see him as a boss. They see him as a friend, or, you know, just another one of the guys. And I think if this company is going to reach the heights, which I think it can, it's going to go as far as TK is going to lead them.
Yeah. Well, we spent quite a while talking about that. We'll call this our super packed special edition. Before we bounce, let's talk about what's done up real good. I do want to talk about a little bit about thing that I enjoyed over the weekend. Saturday, I was trying to get a little work done at the house, and I'd kind of forgotten that the Taylor Hawkins Memorial Concert was going to happen. So I flipped that on, started from the second song that Liam Gallagher sang, so I only missed one song, really. And then I ended up pretty much watching the rest of the show. Some of it I paid a little more attention to than others while I was getting some things handled there at the house, but there were a couple of oh shit moments for me. There was seeing Wolfgang Van Halen play a couple of Van Halen tunes with Dave Grohl on bass. Justin Hawkins on vocals was fucking awesome because he got to pay tribute to Taylor, who was a huge Van Halen fan, but he also got to pay a little tribute to his dad. And that was awesome because he said before in interviews that he's never going to play Van Halen songs with his band, which he didn't, right?
Right.
He's just a guy up there playing guitar as part of this group, playing these songs, getting to pay tribute to one of his friends and also his father. That was fucking awesome, and he did a great job. And Justin Hawkins fucking killed it on vocals as well. And then the other oh shit moment, well, there were a couple oh shit moments. One of the other oh shit moments was seeing Brian Johnson from AC/DC sing a few songs, and then AC/DC songs with the Foo Fighters, and Lars Ulrich from Metallica was playing drums. But Brian had like severe hearing loss a few years ago, and I didn't think we'd ever really see him perform again. So that was really cool for me. Does he still have the range? No, because he's old and he's got hearing loss. But was it cool? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he still sounded pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
And then the last thing was Taylor's kid playing drums with the Foo Fighters on My Hero. That was super emotional and really hard to watch, but very cathartic, I feel like, for the kid and the band. You know, you could see the happiness and joy in all their faces, but Dave Grohl at one point earlier in the night while he was singing Times Like These looked like he hadn't slept in about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was a lot of prep going into that show, but Dave looked pretty rough at one point. I felt real bad for him. But yeah, that was a great concert. They're doing another one at the end of the month in California. Some of the same guests with some different guests also. So I'll probably tune into that one as well.
Yeah.
So what was done up real good for you for this week?
Man, I don't even know. I've been all consumed with wrestling. You know, I had every intention to come in here and talk about Clash at the Castle after Saturday because I thought it was a pretty great show. You know, the in-ring work is not what AEW was, but in terms of just storytelling and just the atmosphere of it was really awesome. I thought Gunther and Sheamus was I mean, you can run that match back time and time again. Those two just beat the hell out of each other. Gunther is fucking amazing, and Sheamus has always just been, the constant professional. But then, of course, our episode primarily focused on Punk because all that stuff happened. But I'm kind of watching WWE now. I think this Dexter Lumis shit with him stalking The Miz is the perfect level of hilarity and the perfect level of just like genius level booking. That the camera shots they're doing, everything is so creative. So I'm a big fan of that. Other than that, yeah, I mean, it's been a whole week of we had so much wrestling. I don't know if I've even. Football starts back, NFL.
Yeah, we got. As soon as we leave here, I'm going to watch a game.
Yeah.
So
all my fantasy football leagues have kicked up.
Let's talk about one more bit of wrestling real quick, because it was a huge weekend for wrestling. So at an event hosted by Conrad Thompson over the weekend, Conrad Thompson, Cassio from local Huntsville radio, who also does some shows with Conrad on his podcast, Empire, and Corey Ron Forrester from the Well Read Comedy guys were doing a panel at a wrestling, sort of like a little convention-ish sort of deal. I heard Corey talk about it this morning. It was at a Top Guys event, which they do for like some of Conrad's top Patreon subscribers or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, they were doing a panel late one night about some of the best promos and some of the worst promos ever. And Cassio and Corey are comedians, so they were like, okay, we're going to shit on some of these, right? And he said they had worked it out beforehand that he was going to shit on Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett was going to slap him, and they had kind of choreographed it and worked through it, because Corey's not a wrestler. He's never done that, right? And he's like, okay, I'm excited, and this is going to happen. So Cassio says something at one point. I just listened to the well-read account, to Corey's account of it this morning on this podcast, and Cassio said something about Jeff's wife, and then she comes out on stage and slaps Cassio. So Corey stands up, thinking he's going to play into this, and he called her a rat ring whore.
Always a classic insult.
So then he thinks he's fixing to get slapped by Jeff, because he was like, okay, well, this is not something we planned, but this is probably still what's going to happen. He says he turns around and he gets walloped over the head with an acoustic guitar by Jeff. So Corey's podcast co-host, Trey Crowder and Drew Morgan, are just laughing their asses off. And Corey's like, I'm fucking pissed. Why are y'all laughing? He was like, I'm fucking going to auditions every day. He was like, I'm trying to make money with his fucking face. He was like, I'm fucking bleeding. I can't fucking move my neck. He's just going clean off. And he's like, I may even sue this motherfucker. He's like, just totally selling this, right? And they're just laughing. They're like,
yeah,
this shit is fake. And he was like, this is fucking, he was like, I agreed to get slapped. He was like, I didn't agree to have a fucking guitar busted over my head. So, but it's so funny because he leaned into it and he really sold it on his podcast. So like, if you didn't know any fucking better, you'd be like, what in the hell's going on?
I guess, head on a swivel when you're around Double J. Also, it just points out to how weird pro wrestling is, because if you were just to explain that to people that didn't know anything about wrestling, right, and you were just like, okay, so there's a room full of people, and one dude gets slapped by a woman, and then the other guy gets hit over the head with an acoustic guitar, and then everyone in attendance just stood up and cheered for the guy that hit the dude in the head with the guitar.
And nobody's checking on him.
They'd be like, what are you talking? It's kind of like how I was trying to explain to my wife all this backstage shit that happened this weekend. And she was just like, okay. Like, wrestling's just so weird in that sort of way. Yeah. But either you get it or you don't.
Yeah, and I admire people like my son. I asked him yesterday before the show, I was like, do you keep up with any of this stuff that happens? He's like, not really, other than what you tell me every once in a while, which I don't talk to him a lot about the backstage stuff.
I mean, most people don't care.
Yeah, and that's what he would say. He said, I just want to watch the shows.
Yeah, and that's, the ratings for Dynamite have just come out, and they went over 1 million, but it wasn't any big number, which just proved to show that, like, hey, a lot of people don't give a shit about this stuff. So, like, nobody really cares. Just put on a good show, and everything will be hunky-dory, and we'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all we got for the week. Real quick, let's cover some fucking basics. Y'all, please follow us. We've picked up a handful of followers on Instagram in the last week or so, and maybe a couple on Twitter. We're at Alabama Slam Pod. Patrick has taken to tweeting some during the events, which has been helpful.
I'm trying to get into it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough to live tweet when you have a 3-month-old and a 2.5-year-old who do not care about what you're trying to do. They want to eat and watch Bluey, so they don't give a shit about anything else.
So give us a follow there. Rate us on Apple Podcasts, please. That's supposed to help us show up better in the rankings. Follow the Alabama Take. That's our network of podcasters and writers founded by Blaine Duncan and T.D. Wood and Caleb Johnson. So Blaine has a podcast called Taking It Down. It's a weekly pop culture podcast. They talk about movies, TV, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then TD has a new podcast called Taking on Sports. A lot of football action happening right there because it's football season. And then newly launched this week, my lovely wife, Jamie, has a new book podcast called Check Your Shelf. It's off to a nice start. She'll be doing that once a month, maybe possibly twice a month. And I was co-host for her first episode just because that was kind of easy, and she wanted to ease into it, and we lived together, and that made it a lot easier. So topics covered were Dave Grohl's book and House of the Dragon. Moving on. I have a new podcast coming out in the next week or two with some of my best friends in the entire world about Star Wars. It's called We Are a Star War. And then if you need shirts or stickers or coffee mugs or anything with any of the podcasts having to do with the Alabama Take or the site itself, you can go to tpublic.com and search Alabama Take and find it. So go get you an Alabama Slam t-shirt and wear that shit with pride.
Also, be on the lookout on our social medias because we're going to start doing some listener questions, and we want to hear from you. We were going to do it this week and had every intention to, and then, the wrestling world went crazy. But, follow us on Twitter and stuff like that. We're going to kind of put out questions that you can email to our Gmail address, and we'll read them here on the show and respond to them. So be on the lookout for that. A little bit more viewer interaction stuff.
Yeah, I believe the email address attached to that is alabamaslampodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
So hit us there or hit us on Twitter. Send in your questions, and we'll read them and try to answer them to the best of our abilities. Get a little interaction going. And I assume we're in for a pretty good, solid episode of Rampage Friday night, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it doesn't feel like 6 months worth of news has passed since we do next week's podcast. Fucking Stone Cold came back, headline WrestleMania. That's like not even in the top 10 of wrestling stories this year.
Which is wild as shit.
It's crazy as shit.
Yeah. Well, anyway, man, we appreciate y'all for listening, and we will talk to y'all next week.
Later, guys.